While I was still in nursing school, I got a job at a nursing home, working the night shift. I thought it would look good on a resume after graduation, and, to a lesser extent, my own grandmother had died a few years prior, and we were super close. I really missed her, and always meshed well with people from that generation. Call me an old soul if you want. Anyway, maybe somewhere in the back of my mind I subconsciously thought working there could help to fill the void that her passing had created. The job consisted of helping change the residents' clothes, making sure they took their medications on time, but mostly I just checked in on them to make sure they were doing all right. If you've never spent much time around elderly people who have outlived their spouse and don't have children around, you'd be amazed at how much they really appreciate just having someone to talk to that seems to care. And I really did care. Before my own grandmother had passed, her mind had started to slip, as my family called it. It started with forgetting names and what she was doing, but by the end it had wiped a good portion of her memories away. Sometimes she would burst into tears when we would talk because she wanted so desperately to remember something, but her mind wouldn't let her. It was heartbreaking to watch, and several of the patients in the nursing home were in the same condition, only they weren't surrounded by their own family, so I did my best to make them feel like they hadn't been forgotten about in this place. The nursing home itself wasn't ideal. This wasn't a luxury living assisted care facility. It was an old-fashioned nursing home. Said so right on the sign out front. They didn't even try to hide it. And the stereotypes did hold true to a certain extent. No matter how much cleaner we used on the floors, the smell of urine could never be fully washed away. You got used to it after a few weeks, but it was the first thing every visitor commented on. Most of the staff were professional, but there were definitely a few who you could tell got annoyed with the patients and were only there for a paycheck. Funding was always tight, so a lot of things that needed repairing or replacing got put on a list that went ignored. It all added up, a burnout light bulb here, a stain on the floor there. Let's just say this wasn't where elderly people ended up if they had money. This place was for the forgotten ones, who could no longer care for themselves and had nowhere else to go. I tried to show up bright and cheerful to every shift, and hopefully spread a little positivity to the residents, but I'll be honest, it always felt like an uphill struggle against the ever-present gloom of the nursing home. We weren't supposed to have favorites, but my favorite was a woman in her late 80s named Teresa. She reminded me so much of my grandmother, sweet and caring, with a million fascinating stories from her youth, but also with the same memory loss as my grandmother, which sometimes turned a 5-minute story into a 15-minute story. She would start out so confidently recalling her days as an army wife, going to military balls in moving cities, and in some cases, countries, every few years. Then there would be an abrupt pause. "No, that's not right. That's not right at all," she would say, angry at herself for getting a name or a place. I always comforted her and told her it was all right, that I wasn't in a hurry and I had all night to listen to her. She would smile and pat my hand softly before getting back on track with her story, until a few minutes later she would forget something and repeat the process all over. It really is the ultimate curse, to be granted the gift of long life, but to have your memories taken from you. It seemed so cruel to me. She was getting worse almost daily, it seemed. One night in the middle of my shift, I heard a scream coming from her room, and I came running in. "Get out!" Teresa demanded, eyes wide open, her face twisted as if she were seeing a ghost. "Teresa, it's me. You're having a nightmare. Everything's okay." "Nothing's okay. Tell her to go. Get out of my room." She wasn't looking at me. She was staring at the far corner of her room and pointing her finger as if something were there. Only there was nothing, just a wall. "Who do you see, Teresa?" "That girl. I don't want her to come in here anymore. Can you not just let me live my last few days in peace? Please, I beg of you, keep her out." "Who, Teresa? Who is there?" I begged. She turned her head and fixed her eyes on mine and whispered one word. As if she said the word too loudly, something terrible would happen. "Cordelia." She said it with such conviction and terror in her voice that it forced me to take a second look in the corner of the room to make sure there really was no one there. "Sweetie, there's no one there. I told her as I stroked her hair with my hand, trying to console her. She shook her head violently and forcefully removed my hand from her face. "There is. She comes in here every night and won't leave. She whispers things to me, awful things. I just want her to leave." One of the night nurses arrived in the room shortly after with a sedative and forced Teresa to take it. Within a few minutes, she had calmed down and gone back to sleep. "Don't indulge her delusions. Just makes my job harder," the night nurse warned me. I wasn't. I was just trying to comfort her, I tried to explain. "You think you're comforting her, but every question you ask about this invisible girl only makes her more real in her mind. If you hear her scream again, just call me," the nurse instructed. "So this has happened before?" I asked. "Yes, for a while now, but she's getting worse. Probably doesn't have much longer left, so we need to just make sure that she stays as calm as possible." The next night I clocked into my shift and did my rounds before going to check on Teresa last. She was sitting up in bed reading her Bible when I opened her door. "Hey lady, how you doing?" I asked. Her normal smile was absent, and instead she motioned me to come over closer, next to her bedside. "Don't let them give me those pills again. I'm not crazy. I know that my mind is failing me and that I'm not long for this world, but I am not crazy. My eyes work just fine and I know what I see. I need you to listen to me. I need what's left of my mind to fight her. I can't let her in. When that damned awful nurse gives me those pills, I can't fight her. She gets in. You don't know the pain. Oh, it's awful, just awful." Teresa began to cry. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. So I did what I would want done if I was in her position. I promised her that I wouldn't alert the nurse anymore if she would stop screaming at night. She nodded and told me that she would do her best. I left her room and told her I would be back later to check on her after I did the rest of my duties, and she smiled her usual warm smile. I came back a few hours later to find her asleep with her Bible resting on her chest. The next day, when I clocked in for my shift, my supervisor told me that Teresa had passed the previous night. The news hit me like a punch to the gut. 3 weeks went by before the room that used to be Teresa's was again occupied, this time by a man named Gus. If Teresa was a ray of sunshine, Gus was a storm cloud. He referred to me as "girl" and would make derogatory comments about most of the other residents often. He was also fond of screaming for me at the top of his lungs. "Girl, come in here, quick! I've fallen!" I would arrive to find him laying in bed, perfectly fine, then asking if I was ready to give him a sponge bath. Not part of my job duties, by the way. I found myself thinking that I could very easily understand why none of his family wanted to take care of him at their house, and was not surprised he ended up here. But then I would shrug those negative thoughts off and remember that everyone deserved to be treated with care, even Gus. Gus was a troublemaker, but compared to most of the other residents, he was in good shape, mentally and physically. In fact, some of the other ladies in the nursing home had confided in me that they thought Gus was quite the looker, which made me giggle. He had been with us about 2 weeks when it began, in the middle of the night. "Girl, come here!" I came running, expecting to find him half naked and ready to crack a dirty joke or something equally inappropriate. But no, this was different. Gus looked terrified. "Tell this thing to get out of my room," he demanded. "What are you talking about, Gus?" "That girl over there in the corner." The words pierced through me like a dagger. I didn't say anything. The words just hung in my mouth but wouldn't come out. "Well, are you going to just stand there or tell her to get out?" Gus angrily asked. "There's no one there. There's no girl in your room, Gus." "Of course there is. She's right there." He pointed to the same corner that Teresa had before, and with the same conviction as well. Before I had time to argue, the night nurse suddenly appeared with a sedative and cup of water. "Here, Mr. Grogan, take this. It will help you sleep." "Sleep hell! How do you expect me to sleep with children running around in people's rooms all night?" 2 more male nurses soon appeared to hold Gus's arms and force the medication down him. The scene repeated itself over the course of the next 2 months like clockwork nightly. The nursing home's response was to medicate Gus more heavily, and by the end of his second week of seeing the girl, Gus could barely formulate a complete sentence. He had been turned into a sedated zombie. Nothing was right about how the nursing home was handling the situation, but I was young and inexperienced in how to deal with these things. I wanted to report what was happening to someone, but I didn't know who, and also I was scared. Scared that I would destroy my future career by going over my supervisor's head, and I really doubted anyone would believe a young woman who was still in college over an entire staff of trained nurses that had dealt with this sort of behavior for years. So I did nothing, and the once foul-mouthed, usually insufferable Gus gradually faded into a walking ghost, incapable of chewing his own food some days. I couldn't take it any longer. The guilt of seeing Gus, as well as countless others, being treated as damaged merchandise that could be medicated and forgotten about without any repercussions was more than I could stomach. I turned in my 2-week notice and went to work for a hospital until I finished my nursing school. I actually met a young doctor at the hospital while I was finishing up my studies, and we hit it off and eventually got married. We now have a 4-year-old daughter together, and she's actually what compelled me to write this and send it in. 2 days ago, I had to return to the nursing home to pick up the medical file of a patient there who was scheduled to have surgery at the hospital I work at. While I was there, I got curious, so I walked over to Gus's old room, and to my surprise, he was still there. He had shriveled up over the years, and whatever old man swagger he might have once had was long gone. He looked hollow and gaunt, like he didn't know up from down. But when I said, "Gus?" he turned his head and looked at me. His mouth hung partially open, not out of shock or surprise, but from years of medication. He said nothing, but I saw something in his eyes, a little glimpse of recognition. There was nothing more to say, and I took the file and returned to my hospital. That night, deep in the middle of the night, I heard a blood-curdling scream coming from my daughter's room. I ran in, grabbed her, and asked her what's wrong. Her eyes were as big as saucers. She pointed to the corner of her room and said, "Mommy, I don't want Cordelia in my room."